Good morning, YouTube. Welcome to the Reptile Barn. We have such an exciting video for you. And I think you can already see what's going on in here. Oh, there's a lot of glare on there. We have baby sailfins! Yay! So this is pure Philippine sailfin dragons from Sophie and Salvador. And this is the method we have always used, and we love it. Will you check inside the eggs and make sure they absorbed everything?
Totally empty.
I see maybe a little goo, but that's pretty much fully absorbed.
This one could be a little bit of yolk. Just a little.
Yeah, it's not too bad. None of these are showing any signs that they were like too dry or anything. That's perfect. Awesome. So there's quite a bit of albumin, but none of the like hard yolk stuff. That's good.
And that's actually...
Look how tiny. I'd forgotten, dude.
So tiny.
So we haven't hatched sailfin dragons in about 10 months, almost a year. And this was a 3-egg, well actually, this was a 5-egg clutch, but 2 duds, something like that? 6 eggs.
6 and 3 duds.
Okay. But the ones in here look absolutely perfect. Caleb just checked last night and nothing had even pipped. So it was very surprising this morning, or when we got here, that they had all hatched completely. Today, for anyone's information, especially I'm assuming that Alex is going to see this at some point. I'll probably message you later today, but this is day 75 of incubation. So we incubate at around 84 degrees, and ours hatch quick, but we have never once seen a problem, ever. Obviously, we would change if we saw any sign of anything going badly, but we have never had a problem. We, in the egg box, have a lot of moss, a lot of coconut, and we stick the eggs at least halfway buried, if not more. To my mind, that's what has been making the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah.
That they have a ton of surface area actually in contact with the substrate that is damp at all times. Quite damp. I mean, this, my fingers are wet after touching this substrate.
Pure cocoa chunks, and there's not enough surface area of the egg touching the substrate at any given time, and they dry out too easily. You have to oversaturate the material to be able to get it humid enough, and it's just not ideal. And
so that's why you use the moss as well?
That's why I use the moss as well. And pure moss too, it would work, but it kind of has the same issue where, because I'm kind of nestling it down in the moss, if it gets a little too wet, it gets the opposite problem where it's soggy and oversaturates the eggs. Whereas doing it kind of with a bottom layer of the chunks and then a moss layer on top, that way if it gets, it gives you a little bit of leeway with resaturating the substrate as the eggs are incubating. Because let's say you put a little too much in, the cocoa chunks will kind of absorb the excess and then kind of wick it up to the moss without the moss getting overly saturated, because it dries out a little faster than the chunks do as well. So
gotcha.
This has worked best for me.
Once we started this method, have we ever lost a fertile egg?
I don't think we have.
I think we are at a 100% hatch rate now with this method. Obviously, if it's a dud, it's not going to hatch.
Yeah. But we've had, I know in the beginning with just the pure chunks, we had some issues with a couple getting too dry.
Right.
But we have not had that happen.
So why don't you explain to me what you're doing here?
This is just our initial handling session that we always do with the babies right out of the egg. They're always a little bit jumpy, but they're a lot more comfortable in the water than any other way that we've tried. And just kind of pick them up, mess with them. Like these ones already, they haven't really mouth flared or gotten upset at all. And if you do this from day 1,
they're incredible.
They're great, and they don't have any problems. You do have to be consistent with them because they do tend to be skittish. So you kind of have to really acclimate them to it. You don't have to necessarily do it every day, but a few times a week from when they're first hatched, and they'll do great.
So it seems like we've had the best luck when we don't have to actually like reach into the enclosure and
Yeah.
grab them out. Even though it takes longer, we like to just sit here with the tub of water like right next to their enclosure and allow them to come out on their own. They sometimes jump from their cage, but they land in the water.
And then after a month or two, you can get to the point where just holding your hand out, they might jump onto you and you can pull them out, or they get more comfortable.
Now, we have never kept iguanas, guys, but from what I have understood in talking with other people, I honestly believe these guys acclimate easier than iguanas. I only bring up iguanas because so many people compare these to iguanas. They're like, oh, that's kind of like an iguana. It's really not that closely related, but it's a large, super impressive lizard with they like to climb, but they also like to swim. They start out as insectivores, then they get more and more herbivorous as they age. So I can see why people might superficially compare them, but in my mind, and again with a huge grain of salt that we don't keep iguanas, they seem pretty easy to acclimate. And I am talking specifically about captive bred ones, not wild caught. But yeah, I think the water, doing it like this, is huge. When we used to try doing this without water, they'd panic. They'd bite us, they'd thrash, they'd whip their bodies so hard that we'd be worried they'd hurt themselves. When they are in the water, it's like
They feel safer.
they feel so much safer, like they could escape if they wanted to. They don't understand this clear-sighted tote here. They just think, oh, if I need to swim away from this giant, I totally could. And they just don't give us a problem. They look perfect to me. Everything looks perfectly formed.
This one's definitely a little bigger than the other two, but
maybe he just absorbed better.
Day one, I think this was the big egg.
Oh, you're probably right. Yeah, and look at the color difference too. Look how much paler this one here is in the corner. Now, again, it's hard to say how much of that is, maybe one absorbed a little bit more yolk or a little bit less yolk or something, but most of them absorbed 95% of their yolk. So they did excellent. They're super strong looking and active. When we used to have humidity problems, sometimes we'd get them to hatch, but they'd be so weak for the first day or two, and they tended to make it, but it was just super stressful. These are already jumping around. I expect them to start eating by tomorrow. I'm going to show the enclosure, although now it's all wet, they won't be able to see inside it, but
You can pull the lid off. Yeah.
So we keep them in things that are pretty small at first and move them up as needed. So the substrate is also just moss and coconut. There's a food bowl here with teeny tiny dusted roaches. We'll offer them all sorts of insects. I'll call up the feeder farm here in a bit, and we can get a variety of roaches or of insects. They really won't touch any of their greens for the first couple weeks. Got a water bowl over here with a stick so that if they get in there at night, they can easily climb out. And then, like we always like to do, they have a stick that is at a pretty good incline for their basking spot, so they can move up and down that depending on if they want to be, 95 degrees to like 100, and then at the very top it's more like 115, and they can choose. Now, the downside of the setup like this is obviously humidity retention. Now, we're in a very small enclosed room. Show you. That's it. I don't know if you could even see that. It stays super warm in here and very humid. However, we will have to spray twice a day and spray heavily in order to maintain high humidity in there. Unlike pretty much all of our other animals, we want it to be tropical levels of humidity in here pretty much all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like 80%.
They can handle dips, but it should be consistently high humidity.
Right. So awesome. So these will be pretty well socialized here in just several weeks. Yeah. Where they'll come out on their own to us, climb around on us. I'm just so stoked. Oh, the other thing to keep them very hydrated is just to do this.
Yeah.
You know, get them in water, let them swim around, let them drink, let them soak it up. Look at that. Just look at it.
Make sure their water bowl is large enough for them to fully submerge in.
Exactly. That guy just took a big swallow. Love it. Yep, so the next clutch is a 4-egg clutch, and they all look really good. And we're still at least a month out more from her next clutch, probably.
Yeah.
But we are officially in sailfin season, and I am stoked about it. We will keep you updated on these little guys. Yeah, hopefully they take to eating really well and everything goes well. But I wouldn't expect anything to go wrong at this point. You know, once they're hatched, we've always had really good luck with them. So, all right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. We are thrilled to be able to hatch these again. Again, these are pure Philippine sailfin dragons, Hydrosaurus pustulatus, and they come from, as far as we are aware, unrelated parents, which is excellent because, you know, there's not a ton of different lines of Philippine sailfin dragons in the country. So we are very fortunate to have unrelated parents. You know, fertility has always been perfect and all that, as long as we breed them at the right time. Yeah, so that is all for now, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, we're the Reptile Barn.